With Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 17, love is once again in the air, this time with a trio of female characters having their hearts racing and their minds being swept up in a whirlwind of emotions. Matsuri is in love with Konohamaru, and Moegi is revealed to have dormant feelings for Konohamaru that she doesn't understand what they are, and Sarada's mind is still racing over the thoughts of her jumping into the arms of Boruto. To make matters even worse, Shikamaru knows all of this information, and he's telling Konohamaru to break Matsuri's heart by exploiting her feelings and killing her. In terms of the character twist in this chapter, there's plenty to look into because there's a lot going on here. So we open up the chapter with Sarada struggling with the emotions that are heavy in her heart, replaying Sumire's words in the last chapter, telling her that she hasn't thought enough about Boruto's emotions or Sumire's own feelings about Boruto that Sarada is aware of. As she replays that moment in her head where she hugged Boruto, Mitsuki notices right away that something is wrong with his teammate, but he wisely chooses to table the whole conversation because now it's not the time to ask her what's going on with her heart, even though he can clearly see that her mind, it is back in Konoha and it's not in the land of wind. We then see Matsuri give us a major reveal that in hindsight makes a lot of sense. The trees are connected to the awakened Shinju and they gain information from those trees, and RYU is used as a vehicle for the audience to learn how this is possible because he states that, hey, we're in the desert and there are no trees around, so how are you getting this information? And Matsuri tells us that trees, they are everywhere, including underground, and that should make you think back to something very familiar from the Naruto manga, Zetsu. Zetsu was the primary info gatherer for the Akatsuki, and long before the group was even formed, he was gathering info on the several dozens of reincarnates of Ashura and Indra, going all the way back to Ashura and Indra themselves, where he's shown in filler episodes trying to gaslight Indra. The way in which Zetsu moved around the world so easily is he moved underground using the roots under the ground, which allowed him to conceal himself in plain sight, undetectable by hiding in the roots, in the trees, and even in sand, which is where they happen to be. This is one of the many subtle instances where the world building from Naruto is further built upon in Boruto, and it's given a twist. Matsuri's doing the same thing that Zetsu did. She's using the roots. Unbeknownst to them, Yodo is listening to this whole conversation that Matsuri and RYU are having, and it's because of how her ninjutsu abilities work, which we learn in Boruto Part 1, they are sound-based. While she primarily was shown whipping her hair around in order to make high-frequency sonic booms, we also learned that her ears are extremely sensitive in hearing as well, being able to hear from long distances, which that should make you look back to her having headphones in her ears when she wasn't in an active ninja role. So active ninja role would be in the tuning exams where deceit is a part of the whole thing, or on a mission. It should make you look at all that differently because the headphones might have been used as a way to block out the noise from things that she would otherwise hear. Hence the headphones and the music that we saw her listening to in chapter 2 of the manga. Yodo relays to Konohamaru that the duo is tracking Boruto using a sensory jutsu that she isn't familiar with, and she tells Konohamaru that it won't be long before Matsuri realizes that they are there, which that makes sense. Sooner rather than later, Matsuri would learn the location, or rather Yodo is assuming that this is the case given how much she doesn't understand about Matsuri's power. They have to assume that they won't be able to sneak up on her without a distraction, which leads to Konohamaru taking charge of the situation. Everything up until that point, it is lined up with the information that Shikamaru has given him, and as he begins to go into action, he too notices what Mitsuki did, which is that Sarada is extremely distracted because her mind is still going over what happened in the last chapter with class rep and replaying why she was hugging Boruto inside of her mind, which leads to Sarada getting called out by Konohamaru, and she quickly says that she'll be ready to fight when the time comes. We then learn that the reason for that battle that is coming is all because their goal is to retrieve the Thorn Soul Bulb that comes from taking down RYU, because getting the Thorn Soul Bulb and returning it to the tree where the original person is sealed away inside of, it will restore them back to normal. This leads to a fight between Yodo and Araya, who warns her to not do anything reckless in her attempt to rescue Shinki. The passionate response out of Yodo when it comes to rescuing Shinki gets Sarada's mind completely out of her own emotional turmoil, and the expression on her face implies that she's coming to understand what Yodo herself is dealing with in terms of the pressure and confusion as she is, potentially with Yodo having feelings for Shinki. After Yodo tells Konohamaru that this is just normal for them to fight in this manner, Konohamaru wants to make sure that everyone understands their assignments for this mission. It's a divide and conquer plan. It's at this point that Matsuri, she notices Konohamaru as he, Sarada, and Mitsuki begin walking down the sand dunes to meet them, and hidden in plain sight are Yodo and Araya as they wait for their moment to reveal themselves. Konohamaru tells them that they are tracking Boruto's location, and when RYU sees them, he defers to Matsuri's command because she is the older of the two. But this is where it gets really interesting. Matsuri, she is falling completely in love with Konohamaru, blushing hard with dilated pupils as she meets Konohamaru's eyes, and she can't even bring herself to look at Konohamaru in the face any further, telling RYU that he's to take over from this point onward. This takes us back to Shikamaru's conversation that he had with Konohamaru just prior to the team being assembled for the mission. Shikamaru tells Konohamaru about the Thorn Soul bulbs being a key to saving those sealed away in the tree, and they cannot allow them to escape once they do destroy the awakened Shinju, because the Thorn Soul bulbs, if they're not used to restore those sealed away, then the awakened Shinju, they'll just be reborn, making it pointless to fight them. Konohamaru then asks Shikamaru, hey, how do you know this information? Because we weren't even able to get this intel from Boruto till when we interrogated him, which that leads to a couple big moments here. The toad that Kashin Koji uses to communicate is inside of Shikamaru's jacket, hidden behind his collar, and Shikamaru basically pulls rank on Konohamaru. He's in so many words telling him, listen, I'm the Hokage, you're the Jonin, you don't get to question me. I got the intel, I judged it to be valuable, I'm giving it to you, now it's your job to take the info that I have and follow the plan that I'm giving you. Shikamaru's plan is one that is based in cold hard logic. It's a one-on-one battle. The Shinju, they would kill most of the people who they go after, and they each have targets that they are going after in order to devour. It's for that reason they must be viewed as enemies, but Shikamaru states that they aren't inherently good or evil. They still can be made one way or the other. He says to think of them as being newly born wild animals, but because they're newly born, they aren't a full threat because they operate off of instinct. Their curiosity can make them pause, and they're going through their own stages of humanity while being influenced via the chakra of the original, because chakra contains memories, chakra contains emotion, which makes Hidari an interesting case, and the potential of an Itachi figure rising up inside the awakened Shinju, namely Hidari, is something very much real, and something that you have to keep your eyes on moving forward. This is a bit of a departure from what we had in Boruto earlier, and this is something that is a lot closer to what we had in Naruto. In Boruto, the villains in part 1 especially, they were designed purposely to be pieces of trash. They weren't meant to be someone that you felt sorry for. You didn't feel sorry for Momoshiki, you just knew he was evil. The same with Jigen, Shojoji, and Ishiki. They were trash who did not have these sobbing backstories. They were evil for the sake of being evil, which was the story reflecting on a harsh truth about humanity, which is that among us, there are people who walk among us who they can't be redeemed. For every character like an owl or a Kawaki who showed bits of good side of humanity where they could be redeemed, we had several monsters who were beyond saving at the point that you met them. You just knew on an instinctual level, hey, these guys, they got to be destroyed. What we're getting at here is that the awakened Shinju, their instincts are to devour humans, but they're in that funky space where they can either go left or right depending on the circumstances they find themselves in. It's because of that information you have a window to destroy them, because the moment they can act off instinct without giving a second thought, you're essentially done. They're slowly being presented as being like the Naruto villains, where one thing happens and they fully embrace their villain saga, but unlike Naruto villains who weren't fully evil in nature, these Shinju at the basic level still want to destroy humans by eating them, which leads to Konohamaru saying, at the end of the day, we still have to kill them. So why tell me this information? It changes nothing. The reason is that Shikamaru wants to exploit their curiosity about humans and them being so young in nature. He wants Konohamaru to lead Team 7 to bond with these Shinju, become their friends, and then they kill RYU and Matsuri. He's saying it's an underhanded tactic, one that Naruto would definitely never agree with, but he says, listen fam, I'm not Naruto, and I don't really care what Naruto would have approved of. From a coldly logical perspective, this gives him the best shot at victory, in theory, and it just makes you go back to how Kawaki and Shikamaru's relationship appeared to change during the time skip when we see how Kawaki was behaving towards Shikamaru in chapter 1 or 2 Blue Vortex very honorably. Now we see why there was a switch. It wasn't just that Shikamaru's memories of hating Kawaki are now transferred to Boruto. Kawaki at his core, he is a consequentialist. As long as the desired results are reached, who cares what the costs are and who cares what moral lines you have to cross? That's basically the approach that Shikamaru is taking as Hokage. Whereas Naruto would care about those moral lines, Shikamaru says, I don't care. This is someone who Kawaki could have vibed with. And we see it with Konohamaru that he's not fully comfortable with this approach. He's more comfortable with the one that Naruto would have took, which is, as Shikamaru said, for the sake of humanity's survival, this is the only way. It's underhanded, but it must be done. We then jump back to Konohamaru approaching the duo, and we see Konohamaru bearing his displeasure at what he's about to do by extending a peace offering. He basically says, they're both after Boruto, so why don't they work together? And the whole time Konohamaru is speaking to RYU, Matsuri is hiding behind Ryu's back, unable to look at Konohamaru fully in the eyes, and she's blushing like crazy, all while Yodo monitors the situation from afar undetected. Unfortunately for Boruto, as they begin working together, Mitsuki has found one of the metal pieces that Boruto uses for teleportation, which confirms the intel that Matsuri had that the toad they killed belonged to Boruto. However, the problem for Boruto is that in just that one short battle, Mitsuki has already broken down how Boruto uses flying Raijin to teleport, whereas Minato would use seals, undetectable seals at that. Boruto uses specific pieces of metal, physical pieces of metal, and Mitsuki was able to figure that out on his own during that short battle, and it speaks volumes to the type of shinobi that being a clone of Orochimaru has made him. And it just goes back to a common theme from Naruto. Your special move jutsu that is supposed to be something that you never use too many times in battle against the same person or in front of too many people, because like Itachi told to Naruto, every jutsu has a weakness, and as Tsunade told to Sakura when she trained her, skilled shinobi are aware of this, and they try to hide their weaknesses in their jutsu as they fight. They camouflage them, but extremely skilled shinobi are always able to break down the weaknesses, even if they aren't taken out very quickly. Mitsuki is still very young, but he is in a very high class of shinobi. As Konohamaru begins to speak to Matsuri, who is now so red in the face that she can't even breathe properly, and she's got her hand on her chest to try to steady her breathing, Sarada and Mitsuki get RYU to leave with them under the belief that they'll work better by splitting up from each other. And this is where we see why Kashin Koji's plan is the way that it is. It's to split up the two Shinju to keep them from fighting together, which is smart. One will be caught up in her feelings where she's feeling so wet at the sight of Konohamaru that she does not see the Rasengan coming until it's too late. The other is going to be a victim of a good old-fashioned handicap match where everyone just jumps on top of him and they beat the brakes off of him. However, for as simple and as brilliant as his plan is, it does come with some risk. RYU reveals that his instincts were to just slaughter every ninja that he ran into, but Jura told RYU and the other Shinju that they weren't able to harm any of the ninja inside of Konoha that they meet. Basically, that they are off limits now, which is basically something we can thank Shikadai for leaving such a strong impression on Jura. His actions during that skirmish where Jura wanted to capture Himawari, it left such a strong impression on him that he basically made Konoha shinobi from this point onward off limits unless they're provoked or unless they are the target of one of the awakened Shinju. That brings us back to another flashback where Shikamaru tells Konohamaru that the reason Matsuri will be his problem to deal with is because she has strong romantic feelings for Konohamaru, and it's because deep inside of Moegi, she has feelings for Konohamaru that she's not come to understand either, which makes that moment in part 1 where Eida teased Konohamaru about Moegi feel like a bit of foreshadowing now. Eida saw something with her Simrigan that made it clear both parties had feelings to each other that they weren't aware of. Shikamaru is telling Konohamaru, take advantage of that situation, while Sarada and Mitsuki split RYU away from him and ignore how uncomfortable all this makes Konohamaru. Konohamaru, being the Rizz god that he is, he gets Matsuri to sit down next to him, and She's sitting with her hands between her legs and she's looking down, blushing, unable to look me in the eyes, in a pose that quite a few of you guys have DM'd me saying, hey, this looks like how Sarada looked when she's sitting next to Boruto in chapter 6 of Two Blue Vortex. But Matsuri tells Konohamaru this isn't how she normally acts, and Konohamaru tells her, hey, what you're feeling is completely natural, just relax. Somewhere in Ninja Heaven, Asuma, he's smiling as he's watching Konohamaru rizz up Matsuri the same way he rizzed up Kurenai on the night that they conceived Mirai. And then 9 months later, the big homie Hidan stepped up, helped him skip child support payments for having a child outside of wedlock. Meanwhile, as this is going on, the toad that has been placed behind Eida's hair, it instructs her to look in on what's happening in the Sand Village. And when Eida gets worried about Mamushi, Kashin Koji tells her, hey, he should be at their hideout, so don't worry. Now, seeing some people confused as to why he's having Eida look to see what's going on in the present, because they're going, hey, he's got 10 direction, so he can see the future. So why does he need to know what's currently going on? Because he should know. Plot hole. It's not a plot hole. So let's clear that up right now, because if that's you, you're overlooking something. Kashin Koji can see multiple possible timelines. The key word there being possible. Time does not flow in only one direction. There are multiple branches that occur when decisions are made. Kashin Koji can see each of those branches, regardless as to if they happen or not. One decision is made in the present, and all those other branches, they cease to exist. They never happen, but Kashin Koji himself is aware of their existence and everything that happened. He retains that knowledge, even though those timelines, they've ceased to exist. That's why he needs Eida. Notice he says Mamushi should be at their base. The keyword there being should, meaning there's a chance that he isn't there, even though the probability is high based on what he had seen. And with the 10 directions and the multiple alternate timelines, he needs to know exactly what's currently going on to ensure that things are playing out exactly as he planned. Because if you run into a scenario where someone behaves differently than they normally would, that power, it is useless. After all, what good are having all these big brain plans when some blunderhead messes up the whole timeline that you had seen? It's invalidated. This leads to Kashin Koji and Boruto getting into a bit of a fight, showing that anyone who wanted Boruto and Kashin Koji to have this Naruto and Jiraiya relationship, you are mistaken. Boruto tells Kashin Koji to not lie to him and to tell him the truth when he asks, what are the percentages that Sarada, Konohamaru, and Mitsuki will fail? When Koji tells him it's not that high that they'll fail, Boruto loses it because that's a non-answer, and it is a subjective answer. Not high, it can mean that, hey, they got a 60% chance of victory, but that's still a 40% chance of failure. Theoretically, if we're in an airplane and I put an airbag in your hands and say, jump out of this plane, and you got a 40% chance that it's not going to open, would you jump out the plane with that airbag? You probably wouldn't, and Boruto is basically saying the same thing here. This leads to Koji telling Boruto that under no circumstances must he leave, because just as Himawari leaving Konoha will result in her death, if Boruto arrives on the battlefield, it will summon Jura, and he specifically says this time Jura will kill Boruto, and that Boruto is their one piece that they cannot afford to lose. And the angry look in Boruto's eyes, it makes it clear Boruto is struggling with what he's being told, whereas Kashin Koji is willing to sacrifice everyone Boruto cares for outside of what appears to be Boruto's own life and Himawari. Boruto cannot make that coldly logical decision, and it's only another layer of tension that's growing between these two. Meanwhile, back in Konoha, we have Jura shopping for books, and when Konoha alerts Shikamaru to what's going on, he tells everyone to stand down and leave Jura alone, and my guy Jura just drops a whole band down on the counter for the clerk to use in advance for the next time he comes in and buy more books, which is someone who prefers reading books in physical format. Jura is definitely my spiritual animal. The only question is, where did Jura get all this money from, let alone an entire band? If Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Volume 5 does not give us a bonus page of a short chapter of Jura working odd jobs to get money to buy books, I'm going to feel cheated. We then end off the chapter with Kawaki walking up behind Amato, removing the cigarette from his mouth, so disrespectful, and slamming him against the wall, demanding that Amato remove his limiters, specifically saying that he wants his power removed to the fullest extent. Whether or not Amato removes his limiters and gives Kawaki 100% access to Ishiki's offensive power? It does remain to be seen since we won't know until the next chapter, but while you wait for it, click here to watch the newest Naruto Explained video, or click here to watch this new video from my Anime Explained channel where I discuss non-Naruto content.